Hi, everybody. Welcome to Q&A with A&V. I am Vincent Racaniello, and joining me tonight from New York, Amy Rosenfeld. Hello, Amy.
Hi, Vincent. Hello, Vincent. How are you today?
I'm very well. This is my third stream of the day, and I'm still as full of energy as at the beginning of the day. And everyone wanted to guess your sweater color, and no one did. But
Oh,
I
they
knew.
didn't give a sweater color?
No, nobody guessed.
Yeah.
But Amy's
Okay.
in a rather good mood tonight. She has some prospects. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah, I have a lot of stuff. Except now I'm very nervous because my reagents are going to across the street and they've already lost part of the kit that was delivered there to begin with. So if my reagents get lost again, I'm not going to be so happy.
But you have other prospects too.
I do have other prospects, but right now, my $23,000 worth of reagents is very important. What
I
do you
understand.
think?
Okay.
And you do have to admit they do not exactly have a good track record.
Understand. But we're not going to cast any aspersions, right?
I'm not casting aspersions. They got a box. It lived underneath a bench for a year. Then I had it moved over. They said that they moved everything. Then I called the company to go through training to find out that they didn't move everything. And now they can't find the pieces.
Very good.
Right?
Yeah.
That sums it up, pretty much.
So Tom says the Beatrice Hahn interview is terrific. The plastics article is very disturbing. Yes. Yeah, Beatrice was fun. And the plastics. Amy, do you know you're eating plastics when you eat an apple?
I've heard, and I can't wait for the twim. You've been telling me about this for a week now.
It'll be
Luckily,
out
I don't
next
like
week.
apples. But luckily, I don't like apples. But if it happens in apples, it's got to happen in other plants that take up
Yeah.
water,
Oh, yeah.
which is all plants.
All plants take up water. Yeah.
So do you think that this is going to somehow inhibit the idea of agroponics or hydroponic growing or something?
I don't think so. I think you use water that's clean. You don't use. The problem is that the ocean
Use
gets
water that's clean.
You don't use water without plastic nanoparticles in it.
Well, where is the apple next to the ocean?
I don't know how the plastic gets. Must be in landfills, and it's very small and it somehow percolates. I don't know what happens, but this is not for plastics. This is for viruses. So let's do some virus stuff. Did you get a chance to look at info on spike ferritin? Amy sent me like 5 papers. So the ferritin is fused to the receptor binding domain, and it multimerizes and makes, a multivalent antigen, which is always good. And then they mix it with an adjuvant, and it looks good. Looks very good.
It's in vaccine.
Yeah, so it's been in several animal models, and it induces not only antibodies but T cells, and they cross-react with multiple variants. Mm-hmm. So, as we know, T cells will cross-react with all the variants because the epitope's not changing. Anyway, it's in a phase 1, Amy, in people.
Yeah, that's good. Wait,
so I think it looks good.
I just sent you a T-cell paper where actually they do change, but it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah,
it was
not
a
all
science
of them.
paper. Yeah. It was like, I don't know, some like 3% or something, if I remember correctly.
Well, next year, Alessandro Sette will return to TWIV to talk about T-cell epitopes with his white glasses. I love the way he talks. Do you like it?
Yeah, I think he's interesting.
Do I make a good imitation?
Yeah, you make a good impression. Not
and
imitation,
then also,
impression.
We will have John Udell and John Mascola, who's the head of the Vaccine Research Institute, and I'm working on some others.
Really?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Oh, look at Taylor's making homemade Zeppole for the TWIV holiday special. I didn't know there was a TWIV holiday special.
Well,
there should be.
Well, oh, okay.
Do you know what a Zeppole is? You know what a Zeppole is, Amy?
Italian donut?
Well, it's fried dough
Yeah,
And
well, isn't that a donut? Fried dough?
they call them Italian donuts, but I never like when they say things like Italian donuts. Here, I'll show you a picture of one. Can you see that?
They're cute.
Oh, yeah, they're deep
Well,
fried,
they
and then
actually look like beignets. Are they beignet-ish?
yeah, but different dough, just pizza dough.
Pizza dough?
Yeah, you
So
make
they're
them with
yeasted?
pizza.
They're
Yeah,
yeasted?
yeah,
Oh,
made with pizza dough.
interesting.
Anyway,
Okay.
that's Zeppole. But typically we don't have those at Christmas. We have those at the Festa di San Gennaro. I don't know if
That's in
anyone.
September.
Yeah. Did you ever go?
I did go in Little Italy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've gone. Yeah.
Fun. Amy, good news. Take Christmas off. My contacts in Rome have approved a December 2021 Catholic card for you. Salute. Hey, that's nice.
That's very
That's
nice.
very
No,
nice.
I don't know if I'm taking Christmas off. It might be the day I do my practice fusions. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, Frank goes to the San Gennaro and gets Zeppoles. That's right. They put them in a bag. They shake,
And then they shake
the
them?
powdered in, and then they shake the bag, and they give it to you, and it's warm, and you walk around, and your hands get greasy, but they are good. I don't know if you can get Zeppoli at Italy.
Yeah, you can. They're on the menu.
They are.
If I
Zeppole.
hadn't screwed it up, yeah, they
I
were
tried
on
to
the
take
menu.
Amy. I tried to take Amy to lunch. I wanted to take my lab to lunch, and since my lab is Amy, I took her to lunch. But she didn't bring her vaccine information, so we couldn't go.
No, I did bring my vaccine information. I just didn't bring my photo ID.
So next week we try again, right?
Yeah, we try again.
Frank, you must have been to Italy. It's just amazing. It's just so much Italian stuff, food. What would you call it? A food
It's
court, right?
No, food court implies garbage alley. It's not a food court. It's
okay.
a Italian market.
Okay.
It's a market. You can get fish and cheese and breads and pasta. I really like the long ones, those super thingies. You know the ones I'm talking about that don't fit into the pot?
Oh, those pastas. Yeah, those were amazing.
That
Those
was
were really
really cool.
amazing.
But I thought that the cutest ones were the bow ties that were red and green and yellow,
Different
like
colors,
the
yeah.
Italian flag for Christmas. They're
Yeah.
kind of like the 7-layer cookies. You know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
so Frank has been to Italy. Several people know Italy. Italy is great. It's like the best of New York, right? You can have all these different foods in one place. The only problem is now at this time of year it's very crowded. So
it's the best for Italian of New York, but I'm waiting for the Jew to go. You know, there's no Jewish, you know, there's no rucola.
Look, Italian food is the best food in the world.
It's good.
Everybody loves Italian food and Italians.
Well, that was the cute shirt, right? With the lady from the focaccia area. She said Italians everywhere or something.
Italians are everywhere. She had a shirt, and on the back it said Italians are everywhere. Yeah. All right. So Laura received J&J in March, Moderna booster in October. Do I need a third shot to be protected from Omicron? How many? March, April, May, June, July, August.
No, it doesn't matter. Her Moderna was in October, so even if she needed a third shot, she can't get it until March, and she only got one J&J, so she would need to have two of one type, either the Moderna or the J&J.
Okay. So. Elena, I can't remember how to say it. Quiv is not only good listening during dog walking, but during gingerbread baking. You make good gingerbread cookies? I hope so.
Yeah, sure. Maybe she's making, not cookies, maybe she's making a house with all the squishy royal icing and gumdrops and stuff.
Oh, so also this question, Elena asked.
Maybe she's making a gingerbread variant. That could be kind of cool.
So Eleanor also asked this question from Mike. Any info on Mrna's just announced COVID rapid test? Really? Did he announce a rapid test, Amy?
No. Doesn't do that anymore. I think I don't know what he announced. I don't pay attention.
Michael Mrna can't stop talking about the need for rapid COVID tests. The country may finally be listening, but is it too late?
Well, Biden is now releasing rapid test free.
You know, the Boston Globe just published that. We did Mrna a year ago for God's
More
sake.
than a year ago.
Nobody
We did
listens to us. That's the problem.
No, it's the problem is he talked a lot and he didn't pony up anything.
So Eleanor wanted to know.
He basically
Oversold and underproduced, right?
Sure, we can go with that.
Underdelivered.
Underdelivered. We can go with that if that's the nice way of saying what I really think.
Eleanor wanted to know what you thought of him being the CEO of this or whatever communication company or med something.
Yeah, he's the chief scientific officer of EMED. Good luck to them.
So he left Harvard.
Yeah.
You don't look on that favorably? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not a big fan of Michael's. No.
Okay. Okay, Joshua wants some positive news. Double vaxxed. Astra Moderna. 9,000 cases in Quebec today, 6,000 yesterday. So, Amy?
Who cares about cases?
Yeah, no,
tell
we
me
don't
what
care
the
about
hospital.
cases.
Tell me what the hospital is. If you're still able to go to the hospital and have a heart attack and your bone's set, it's perfectly fine.
By the way, way down in the chat, Yash writes, today Dr. Fauci said that outcomes, hospitalization, and not cases are more important. Did Amy comment, you think? Yeah, Amy has been saying that here for months, folks.
Exactly.
And you guys often push back. And she's right, because Fauci today gets it. Hospitalizations are what matter. Cases don't matter.
Exactly. I don't know if he got it or if his speechwriter got it. I don't know. I don't care. Whatever.
As we've been saying, don't keep testing, especially if you have no symptoms. There's no point. Just want to know who gets hospitalized and give me those numbers. The other numbers don't matter. Anyway, back to Joshua. Does Joshua need a boost?
I don't know, because it depends on when he got his Moderna. Probably should get a boost in I don't know, April. I think he would feel better. And if his job requires it, like we now have to require it, doesn't matter if you need one or not, right? You can't go to work.
All right, so Paxlovid was approved today, right?
Yeah. I sent you the thing. Sent you the thing from the New York Times.
It was authorized. And so Peter says, looks like the potential fly in the ointment is liver problems. What's with the liver problems, Amy?
I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
Protease inhibitor. Patients, well, that's, so the FDA statement, FDA statement says, there's a protease inhibitor, and it's given with ritonavir to prolong its half-life, right? It inhibits its degradation. And they say liver problems have occurred in patients receiving ritonavir. Therefore, caution should be exercised when administering Paxlovid to patients with pre-existing liver diseases. Talk with your health provider. It's not the Paxlovid, it's the ritonavir.
Well, what does ritonavir do?
I believe it inhibits cytochrome P450 and prevents the turnover of drugs. It's often given with other drugs to prolong their half-life. So that's the price you pay. CDC does have a breakdown of deaths between boosted and unboosted. Last date was a week of 1031. Boosted were 4 times less likely to die than unboosted. Yes, but I'm sure that you're still in the 90s protected against death.
Well, according to the graph in the Times, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I think it does. I think statistically, if you're 92 or 94, it doesn't really make a difference.
Fully vaxxed with Moderna, 19-year-old. I think I was infected last week. Booster in 1 month or no?
No.
Oh. Because he was infected?
Yes. If he thinks he was infected, there's no need for a booster.
But you should get tested to know for sure, because the other viruses can cause similar symptoms. Right, Amy?
He can take an antigen test.
I want to say to you, I've finally exceeded my ability to keep up with both you and my life, so I can't stay. Okay, goodbye. You can watch the reruns or not. Hey, Twiz
Is
reruns,
Buenos
Amy.
Aires? Oh,
I
are
want to
you
say it
like?
is good evening.
I was gonna say I didn't think it was good night. Is this like I Love Lucy reruns?
Yeah, we
The
should have Twiz
Ricardos?
reruns. I'm going to start making excerpts. Well, the problem is we don't have video very far back, and those are the ones that you should make excerpts of. But Amy,
What do
what do
you
you
mean
think of
we don't
this?
have video very far back?
It's like 2 years, right?
Pandemic's only been 2 years.
Yeah, well, we have some select episodes where I traveled and did video, but
Yeah,
I
exactly.
could look through those. But by the way, Amy, what was I going to? What do you think of the idea of making like a 2021 highlight video?
I think that would be great. Make it
I
as a,
could
like 10-second TikToks. Yeah.
hold, pull off at holding up his Twiv mug.
I
And he
think
went
that
like
that would
this.
be
He
great.
pointed at it, but he covered his face, so I cut it out because it was covering his face.
No, you should have included it. You got to include it. And then can you have you with the turban and the envelope?
I don't have a turban.
Oh, we can get you a turban with the envelope.
What is this, Claxton? Social distancing makes pandemic worse?
No, it doesn't make pandemic worse.
Doesn't distancing make herd immunity hard to achieve with a virus that has a high mutation rate and a vaccine that allows continued infections?
How does vaccine allow for continued infections? Okay, let's
Well, it
not
does.
let's
It
not
does, of
answer
course.
this. Yeah, right. But let's not answer this question because they've got all the data and it's all reversed to be like an anti-vaxxer.
Okay, fine. I do what you say, Amy.
You don't have to do what I
Oh,
suggest, but I think that that's. Oh wait, did you see? So I'm just reading this guy who said Westfield 90 said several universities are closed in January. Did you see Columbia came out and said today that the first 2 weeks of your semester are virtual, remote
oh,
only?
what a bunch of chickens. Bunch of chickens. Shame
I
on you,
wonder
Columbia.
if that means that Edmund's not going to be able to come.
Probably not. So the first 2 weeks of classes are virtual?
Yep, automatically. Then they'll reassess.
Who gives them this advice? I guess you don't know.
They don't. Do you think they're calling me?
No, they're not calling me. Why would they call me? Anyway, Ailina wants to know which expert on Slavitt's recent podcast did you think gave the best answers? I know the answer to that.
Okay, you tell them.
Paul Offit.
Yeah, I thought Paul was best.
Did he come on after he came on Twiv?
Yes.
Copycat.
I especially didn't like some of the females, some of the female epidemiologists. Several of them rubbed me the wrong way. Their answers were ignorant.
Thank you, BJR2, for your contribution. 2 Farm Ds from San Francisco. Thank you. I recognize you guys. I do. All right, so John writes, when do you think or what data would be need to be able to make a decision to allow natural infection to be our future boosters?
I think we have the data.
You mean no vaccination, Amy?
No. I think we have the data about Oh, I thought this was about. Okay, I missed.
Not vaccinating. So not vaccinating at some point.
Well,
I think
not
it's going
boosting. I thought it was about not boosting. So I think we have the data about the efficacy of the the effectiveness of the vaccines in real life, and that should be allowed to make our future decisions about boosters and allow us to go to natural infection. I think it's very clear what it is, right?
You hear that Israel's going to do a 4th boost now? A 4th
Yeah,
dose?
I'm the one who texted you and Daniel about it last night. I was so appalled.
It's appalling.
Yeah, I just said I was hugely appalled. I kind of texted you guys several papers today so that he could comment on them or include them in his update tomorrow because I felt that they were important. But is Amy on the autism spectrum or something, and why does she communicate this way? Really, Samarja? Really?
It's Why do you have to be insulting, folks?
Well, it's not
you
just
know,
insulting. It's unbelievably rude and cruel. I don't think she would like me or he to go up to her and say, "Are you this big an idiot?" Um, but yeah, I'm the one who texted you and Daniel about it last night because I think it's so appalling. And I think that the argument that we need to vaccinate to protect the unvaccinated is ridiculous. We don't do it for flu. We don't do it for measles. We don't do it for polio. Why are we doing it for this?
it doesn't warrant a timeout, moderators. It's a removal, please. Thank you.
It doesn't just not merit a timeout or a removal. Like she should be banned.
Yeah, removed from the channel for sure, because I don't want people insulting you.
It's a personal attack. And this is a scientific discussion. It has no place. And if you don't like my personality, go somewhere else for the information. But good luck to you, because I'm sure you're not able to discern it properly. So,
any data yet on protection against serious disease of 2 versus 3 doses?
I think that was in one of the papers I texted you today.
The one I'm looking at was different orders of vaccination infection. It didn't really matter. You still get the broad neutralization.
No, I thought that the paper or the preprint I texted you was from Cromer and started to look at whether or not 3 versus 2
is any better.
With Vivian, yeah,
what
especially in terms of Omicron. I don't know, if you sneeze too hard, you miss the effect.
The problem is it's too close to the boost, and it's going to have an artificial prevention of infection. You need to wait 6 months, and then you ask, is disease any less? It's already 92% prevented, so it's not going to get much better.
Right, but the question actually asks about severe disease.
Yeah.
But what they've done is that they've changed the goals of the vaccine. So while the vaccine was developed to prevent severe disease, now they're asking it to prevent infection. That's like developing a car and asking it to fly. It's never going to happen, right? Car's not going to happen. So this is not really appropriate. If you want to develop a vaccine to prevent infection, you have to start all the way at the beginning.
So someone said the insult had a Streisand effect. You just got a wave of love. I don't even know what the Streisand effect is. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, Barbara. A lot of people didn't like Barbara, but now everybody's a Barbara fan.
Yeah, everybody's an Amy fan.
Didn't you know everybody, nobody liked her when she did Funny Girl and she did Yentl and, her famous line. Yeah. You know her most famous line is, Hubble, you have it's the end of the way we were. Hubble, your girl is lovely. When she and Robert Redford go their separate ways after they got divorced and he finds a new wife. Yeah. But everybody thought she was a ham.
What percent of the U.S. population do you think are naive, no vax, no infection? Do you have any thought on that, Amy?
Naive?
Yeah, never vaccinated. What is it, 70% fully vaxxed, right?
Yeah, maybe. Well, are you including kids in that?
No, that's adults. Kids are a different percentage.
Kids, right? Yeah.
We'd have to figure it out. I don't know, Elena. But
I don't know, but my guess is at this point, completely, utterly immune naive to the virus is probably between 10 and 15%.
All right, so someone's now saying that's not the Streisand effect. Amy knows what the Streisand effect is. You guys argue offline, not here. Penelope said, have you heard their tests not picking up Omicron? I heard the FDA has found some over the counter. What are the names and are they still on the shelves? I don't know, but the FDA should have them on their website, no?
Yeah, I would think so.
But yes, some of the tests might miss Omicron, and the FDA a while ago, when Omicron emerged, said qualify your test, and the ones that don't work are being removed.
Could be.
But don't ask the pharmacist; they won't know.
No, but South Africa came out. So how long has Omicron been like in the news? 3 weeks?
Yeah.
2 weeks?
Yeah.
So South Africa came out today and said that Omicron cases are dropping. It was like, okay, we have the attention span of me.
So Pamela said, it moves up too quickly. I love Amy and her realness. Superficial people would rather we all have fake, superficial, nice personas. I'll take Amy any day.
That's cute.
So you're always going to have fans because that's true.
Good.
Kang says, what would be better at neutralizing SARS-CoV-2, anti-spike or anti-nucleocapsid or any other non-spike protein antibodies?
Well, I don't know that there are any anti-nucleocapsid or any non-spike neutralizing antibodies. I think there's the idea that there could be, but I don't know of any that are completely, I would bet money on. But I'm sure if there could potentially be an anti-nucleocapsid antibody that works like the anti-ad antibody internal rate that works like a sponge, but I don't think it's been found.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's potentially there, but we don't know of any except spike. Yeah. Amy, how is the genome of a novel virus sequence when we don't know any part of the sequence yet for primers?
You do degenerate priming. Random hexamers. So you make a oligo of like 6 nucleotides long, and within that population, every nucleotide has been changed. So no 2 oligos are actually identical. And it's just randomly generated. So you have 10 million combinations.
Is your sweater orange?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was red.
No.
Okay.
It's orange. Orange.
Canada is requiring boosters for people even if they receive their initial 2 doses 2 months apart. Is this necessary?
2 months is only 8 weeks. It's a little too close. It should be more like double that.
Yeah. I feel that this should be a celebratory moment of having decoupled deaths from infections, and yet the panic button is wearing out. Well put, Westfield 90. Don't you think, Amy?
Yeah, for sure.
That's great. Do viruses ever use pseudouridine like the mRNA vaccines do?
Not that I'm aware of.
And Amy, though, there's certain RNAs in the cell that have pseudo-U, right? Modification?
Yeah, there are. I was thinking of EIF5 that has the hypo something or other.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that, I was confused because that's like the only thing that has that. But yeah, there are probably things that have pseudouridine. Otherwise, our stuff would be sensed.
Ribosomal RNA, tRNAs, non-coding RNAs have pseudo-U, and it's recently been found in mRNAs. How interesting. And there's a review article. So we should check that out. Thank you for bringing that up. It's interesting.
Well, I mean, that's how she found it, right? It's in the mRNAs and in the tRNAs, and she didn't understand why they weren't sensed. And then she found it, and that explained why they weren't sensed compared to virus, right? But I've never seen it in virus.
My friend is a dermatologist. Okay, let's stop there. Stay in your lane. Okay?
Exactly.
Stay in your lane. That's what Daniel said.
Although I did give you skin advice yesterday, right? I said exfoliate,
Yeah, right.
eye cream.
I said to Amy yesterday, I said, people say I look tired because I have wrinkles under my... What can I do? I'm not tired. It's just wrinkles. So she said, well, you should put some eye cream on. Okay. Anyway, going with 63 bits, she said it's not good to get too many vaccines because they put a lot of stress on your body. Immune system, is this true? Is there a limit? They put far less stress than infections.
Not true.
And there are bacterial vaccines with many antigenic components, right? Over 20 different components. No, you can't put too much stress on. What stresses your immune system is an infection.
Yeah.
This is a very typical uninformed. I don't want to insult anyone. It's uninformed.
Well, she's not an infectious disease doc. She should stay in her, as Daniel would
Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane.
That's right.
You know, I'm not going to the liver guy to learn about my eczema and stuff, right? She'd be very insulted if I went to a liver guy and the liver guy said, blah blah blah. So
Israel doing 4th dose over 60. Yeah, that's not needed. The 3rd dose is sufficient. Well, that's their country. They can do what they want. Amy, does pre-fusion stabilization prevent S1 subunit shedding? I thought it reduced it, right?
Yeah, it reduces it.
Because it maintains it in the pre-fusion state. And I think the conformational change is needed for shedding, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I think the conformational change is absolutely needed for shedding.
Are the scientists able to measure T and B memory cell strength as regards Omicron?
Yeah.
Yes,
sure.
Of course. I'm sure they're doing it. And we're going to have...
no, I think that they already have a paper. I think I sent you the paper.
Yeah, I'm sure Alessandra will talk about it, right?
I would hope so. Otherwise, is he just modeling his white glasses?
No.
How many different frames does he have?
No,
What kind of styles? So.
Currently, we have COVID, 3 doses of Pfizer that went to a sold-out indoor basketball game. Could you speculate what my long-term immunity might be? Are you sick? No, probably not, right? You just got tested, and you're positive. So you don't even know if the virus is reproducing.
Right, because you got a PCR.
You're probably boosted. 3 doses already got great long-term breath, so you're good.
So
that
somebody...
includes Omicron. Yes, go ahead.
No, somebody said, how rapid antigen tests were horrible and that you should only use PCR. And he was some MD from, I don't know, like Minnesota or something. And it was like, really? Did you think this through? Just don't understand.
How long does it take to study T-cell responses in a new variant? Did you say that there are already some results out?
Yeah, they have a paper, I believe.
Yeah, a preprint?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
so
I
that's
sent
it.
to you
A couple
guys.
of weeks. Because you just had the peptides made and you take lymphocytes and you incubate them together.
Yeah. I think I just sent it to you this afternoon. Hoping that Daniel would talk about it.
Yeah.
Along with the English study that we just said talks about, how important T-cell immunity is. By it's not Sarah Gilbert, but I think the last author is one of her longtime collaborators.
Amy, a year ago we were pushing T-cells. We had Crotty and Rosette on, and still people bemoaned the contraction of the antibody response. And now they're starting to realize that T-cells are
really
important.
Can we call your friends across the island and see if they'll what they have to say now? Do you think that they're going to have reassessed?
We don't need revenge. Thank you, Elizabeth, for your contribution.
It's not revenge. I just want to know if they have seen the light.
Mario said you have Ferrari red. Forza. Strength.
Yeah, it's orange. It's orange.
I plan on rapid testing my elderly aunt and uncle outdoors while leaving the test card out in the cold for 15 minutes affect the results.
I don't know. What does it say?
No, they want to do it outside, so they want to know if the cold will be a problem. I don't think so, right?
It should be fine.
If cold is not going to be a problem. But it's good that you ask, right?
Yeah. Although it might slow down the reaction. I mean, temperature does make a reaction, right?
Yeah, it may take a little bit longer. All right, Renee says 2 doses Pfizer in the summer, 8 weeks in between, positive PCR last week, almost no symptoms. Doctor says the COVID test will be positive for the next 8 weeks or so. Well,
next 8 weeks?
They might. Not necessarily. It depends. So they could be. He or she should have said they might be positive for the next 8 weeks because you could have lingering bits of RNA that are positive. But that doesn't happen to everyone.
I was going to say, I thought that was very rare.
Yeah, it's quite rare to go that
less than
long.
20%. Yeah, less than 10%. So I don't know why they automatically gave this person like such a negative.
I was potentially exposed the same day I got boosted, was wondering if I was infected, then is my body mounting one immune response to both vaccine and the virus? Yeah. They're together, yeah.
One response.
One response. One response to rule them all. Susan, thank you for the Shapeways or Wine Fund.
You're buying more viruses?
Well, today on the Virology Live, I showed my 2 little 3D printed. And I said, I'd love to buy more. So a lady sent me $30 for another one. She said, here, buy another one. And so now Susan is contributing.
That's great. What are you going to get?
I don't know. I have to see. I would like a phage.
Like T4?
I have a phage here.
Like T4?
You know what else I have here? Look what I have.
I don't know. I can't say. I don't know. It's too close. I can't say.
You know what that is?
It's a pig, right?
No, it's a tardigrade.
Oh, I don't know what a tardigrade is.
Live strong. Live small, die never.
Oh, okay.
Tardigrades are amazing. Here's D614G. Do insertions, deletions that are in coding regions and not integer multiples of 3 bases long survive?
No.
Oh, it shifts the frame. Yeah, you can't scramble all the other codons. No, it doesn't. It's the end of that virus. Right, Amy?
Yeah, usually.
Wondering when is the best time during pregnancy to get a booster to pass the most antibodies to the baby, if timing makes a difference. It does. You don't want to do it too late, right? Because then you don't have enough time to pass on.
I would think the middle of the 8th month.
Yeah, I think second trimester, or is that too early?
Third trimester. Second trimester is too early.
Okay. Yeah, we did a study on TWIV a while ago, which indicated that.
Yeah, I think like 6 weeks before delivery would probably be good.
Is this how the pandemic ends? Everyone gets Omicron? No, probably not. Why would you think everyone gets Omicron? I mean,
there are other variants already circulating.
Yeah, I don't think so. Are you and Amy asking guests to rapid test for holiday gatherings? Well, we don't have... Amy, do you have holiday gatherings?
Hanukkah was months ago.
Yeah, and I don't have holiday gatherings because I live with my wife and 2 kids, and that's who's going to be here for the holidays. So, no, I don't ask them.
Wait, you're not having the 3rd kid? You booted the 3rd kid out?
Oh, yeah, he'll come visit, but he doesn't live here. That's right. I didn't boot the 3rd kid out. No. Boy, that would be nasty of me.
I know, that's what I'm thinking.
I do not ask people. All I ask of people is to be double vaxxed, and that's fine with me. If they're triple, which most people in New Jersey are, that's fine.
Well, aren't the 5 of you triple vaxxed? I highly doubt that Aiden.
No, Aiden got a 3rd dose, but Devin and Nadia are not. They haven't yet got it. They're trying to get it.
It's hard to find?
I don't know what the reason is. Tony says, have you seen the report from Imperial College that suggests Omicron cases are 15% less likely to attend hospital, 40% less likely to be hospitalized compared to Delta? So I have problems with these hospitalization data. Take them with a grain of salt. If this is true, it's great, of course. But I criticize the ones that say Delta gives you more hospitalization because you can find another study in a different population that says it does it less. So these are all inaccurate in my opinion. And so I would not be constant if I said, yeah, I take the ones that say it's less virulent because it's the same problem. What do you think, Amy?
I think that they're just, I don't know, they're just grasping for straws.
A&V, can you explain why the missing ×0 on the Hong Kong graphs are so critical?
Because you don't know how much stuck to the cell. And if
When
it
you
sticks to the cell and it only stays outside the cell, it's not replicating. So if you added something, and let's say you add 100 things, right? And 99.9 and 99 of them get washed away, then the increase is all due to replication, things that got taken up by the cell and then reproduced. However, if 60% of them remain bound to the outside of the cell, they're going to remain bound to the outside of the cell or whatever. And then you don't really know that what you're looking at is not things that are partially stuck to the tissue culture plate and remain outside of the cell, but you were able to scrape off when you freeze thawed, basically. No?
Yeah. So apparently I wrote a blog about time zero. Is that right?
For sure.
I don't
Because this is
remember.
not the, yeah, for sure. Because I've
Why?
been complaining about the graphs not having time zero since the first animal studies for EV68 were done. There is absolutely no time zero in many of those papers. And as far as I can tell, they claim that, oh, look, it replicated. And I'm like, no, it didn't really replicate, didn't do anything.
I don't understand why so many people are leaving out the time zero, though it's a standard, right? And this group in Hong Kong is not like they're new to the game. They've
I
been
don't know
doing
who
this
the
for a
group
while. Malik Peiris has been doing virology for a long time. He's no slouch, but this is
Really?
inexcusable.
Then why would you do this?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking you. I don't get it.
I don't know, but I do have to say it is a trend because I heard a very reputable group talk about related virus to us, and they had no time zero, and they concluded that the virus, that their variant was more neuroinvasive. And I was like, really? I didn't really see that, but
Okay.
you know.
Are we boosted? Are you boosted, Amy?
Yeah, I'm boosted.
Yeah.
I showed you my harpoon mark yesterday.
So, Amy and I got boosted last week, just before this live stream, and then the next day, Columbia decided to require a third dose for admission to the facility. So it was on time, but we thought that the data out of Canada showing that a properly spaced third dose gives you the correct antibody breadth was convincing. Although, as you heard Paul Offit say, that we really like to know about disease, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Which is going to come in soon.
Maybe.
I heard that rapid tests are 50% accurate in picking up asymptomatic infections. What kind of rapid tests are we talking about here? Do you know, Amy?
I don't know.
Do you know the
But
overall issue here?
They should be way more sensitive than.
Yeah, no, that's not correct.
50.
For
I
SARS-CoV-2,
think
no.
I was going to say, I think Daniel cites a much higher number, closer to like 85 to 90. And if I got it correct last Saturday when Daniel dropped, he said, you know, he doesn't really want PCR tests done anymore. He wants rapid antigen to know that you actually have active infection, right?
Mm-hmm. 2005 SARS research proposed that blocking renin-angiotensin pathway was a rational therapy for SARS, possibly other diseases. Why does this not apply to SARS-CoV-2?
Well, I don't know why blocking the pathway would be a rational therapy, because it doesn't reduce the presence of ACE2 on the surface of the cell. It just inhibits its signaling cascade, and we are not clear that that signaling cascade is engaged at all when the virus binds to the receptor. So I don't know why that would be a rational therapy. And I don't know what other possible diseases he's talking about, unless they're all related to SARS and coronas, because I don't think any other virus uses that as a receptor.
Ditching the Grind wants to know if we had any side effects from the booster. I had just soreness for a day at the site of injection, nothing else. Amy had a different story. Maybe she wants to tell you about it. But she has to tell you the complication first.
Which was what?
Well, you got both the flu and the COVID shot in your same arm.
2 weeks apart.
Yeah.
2 weeks apart. Yeah, so I thought it would be fine. 2 weeks apart. I thought, no problem. My arm was just a little sore from flu, but it had healed. Now I have the 9.5-day bruise. Vincent looked at it yesterday. I showed him exactly the hole that's left for where the needle punctured me. Remember that? Then I had a headache, chills, fever.
But look, you can see she's fine.
It was a disaster.
Thank you, Renee, for your contribution. I'm glad you could make it live.
Yeah. But still, I still have a bruise and the harpoon mark.
You'll be fine. So that's, that's better than getting COVID, right? All right. Regarding anti-vaxxer.
It's nothing considering the fact that, what did you get when you got variegated for variola and you have the scar, right?
You can have a scar. Can you compare COVID vaccine shot series breakthrough infections with other vaccines such as polio, smallpox, etc.? Same issue. We've talked about this many times on Twitter. All these other vaccines do not prevent infection. Breakthrough was coined in this bloody pandemic. It's no such thing as a breakthrough when that's what the vaccine does. Polio vaccines don't prevent infection. They prevent polio. Same with smallpox.
All right, then I can take one or two more and then I have to go. But what's amazing to me is that it was fully acceptable. And if you talk to, us and some other probably well-respected pediatricians like Offit, it was acceptable and OPV was a great vaccine, right? But there's that 1 in 100,000 chance of getting VAP. But everybody lined up their kid and got vaccinated.
1 in 1.5 million.
1 in 1.5 million, okay. But everybody lined up their kid and got vaccinated.
Yep.
Right? And yet, there's even less risk for any of the complications due to the vaccine and people don't get vaccinated. It's like amazing. I just don't understand.
Amy, do you have any information as AstraZeneca as a booster? I got 2 Pfizers, then an AZ booster. Is that good?
My friend did that in Montreal. He seems fine.
I think it's fine. Yeah. Any combination is fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
You've spoken in the past that multiple vaccine shots could initiate an autoimmune disorder. How likely is this as we get more and more shots? Is that likely, Amy?
Not at this point. I think we're good.
I think 3 is fine. Now, if you were talking about 20 or 30, that might be a problem. I don't know what the magic number is.
I had to, well, this is slightly different. I had to stop at my 6 attenuated measles vaccines. I was like, you're going to give me measles.
Look, at this point, the 3rd dose spaced properly apart is what you need to fix everything. You're not going to need a 4th. Unless you decide, as Paul Offit said, that you now want to prevent infection, which was not the goal of the vaccines. And maybe that's what they're doing in the 60 and over in Israel. I don't know. But that's changing the game, as Paul said, and that's not acceptable.
Well, it's now asking the car to become an airplane. The car wasn't made to be an airplane.
Did you see the article in the Post today about the Army's coronavirus vaccine? Yes, that's the Ferritin nanoparticle vaccine, right? Yeah. It looks good. It looks very good. I don't read the Post regularly, but I saw it because I was looking for information on the vaccine. But then I found multiple journal articles.
I think I sent you one of them.
Yes, you did. Amy seeds me on an hourly basis with papers.
Not hourly. Depends on how long my incubation time is.
Doesn't matter if we have plastic in us. That's a good question. I don't know if we can do a controlled experiment, right? Because there's no one without plastic probably, and I don't know how long it would take to find out. That's a good question. Elizabeth has an autoimmune disorder, bad flares with 2 prior Pfizer shots. How should I balance the risks, benefits?
Talk to Daniel.
You should ask Daniel Griffin, but Amy, you would say you had a bad flare, right?
Yeah. I got 3 Pfizers, and all 3 times it took there were side effects for a week, but then you get over it. And it happens with for me, it happens, there's a side effect, maybe not to that extent, with every vaccine I get. So to me, it's just an inconvenience and I just progress onwards. I wouldn't even say like it's VAERS or VARS, whatever
Bears.
yeah, VAERS. I wouldn't even say like it's a VAERS thing that I would ever
No,
contemplate
you wouldn't
reporting.
report that, no. But Elizabeth, depends what your flares are, if they're what severity, and you should, if they are quite serious, then you should talk to the doctor, and they may say don't get it. But then you
Yeah.
should be vigilant, and if you do test positive, you'd want to get monoclonals.
Well, not only that, but there are other options, right? I mean, I heard like Peter Hood has his idea that his vaccine will be available beginning of January. I think Matt Friedman has talked about Novavax is now approved in the EUA, so I guess in the EU, I think. So maybe it would be coming here soon. I don't know. I mean,
Yep.
maybe there are other modalities.
Do you believe the virus is airborne, Amy? So airborne
Yeah, of
has a
course.
certain meaning. It goes through the air in droplets, not in. So airborne is typically meant by some to
naked?
indicate the tiny droplets that go the farthest.
It's
But
hard to know.
I think it's hard to know, but I would say the majority are the larger droplets. But yes, it's transmitted
it
through
has
the
a
air.
propeller on it. Okay, it has a little propeller on it. Some of them work better than others, like the little beanie.
That's right.
It's got a little
I've read
beanie.
there were
Okay.
some RBD neutralizing antibodies that are unaffected by the variants. Could these be the correlate of severe disease protection as opposed to T cells? What do you think?
Could be, but
I
it
think they
seems
could
more
probably
like
contribute, right?
yeah, it seems more like the T cells. All right, one more because it's 8:50 and I need to go do my plaque assay.
In a post-COVID world, is there anywhere to get an antibody test without having to visit a doctor clinic? Yeah, in New York, you can get them on the corner.
That's kind of like a clinic. I don't know that they're doing antibodies versus swabs.
It says on
They're
the
only
sign
doing
outside the
swabs.
incubator that they're doing antibodies,
Oh,
antigens, PCR, whatever you want.
that's
No
great.
prescription needed.
That's
It depends where
great.
you are, Aspie, right?
I think so.
Anyway, this one is, in a post-COVID world, mask wearing will once again disappear. Why won't doctors and scientists openly endorse lifelong masking as a positive health decision with undeniable viral benefits?
Because it's not normal. Because people like to see other people's faces and their facial expressions, and people who don't hear well read lips and various other things.
Yeah. Although a lady wrote today an email to me. She said, before COVID, I used to get respiratory infections all the time. And as soon as I started wearing a mask, I haven't had anything. So I think I'm going to keep wearing them.
Well, it depends also. Well, it depends on what respiratory infection you're talking about. Like RSV and flu, I'll agree to. Rhino, I will not agree to. Because rhino is very clear. Like actually, when you look at the even the biofire, yes, it dropped, but it did not drop anywhere near as significantly as anything else. And initially, I thought it was because there were 160 types, but it's not. It's because it's fomite transmitted, right?
Mm-hmm.
You use the fork or the cup or something or other. So, and it's clearly a respiratory disease. So no, I wouldn't. It would depend on what disease, what you want to protect against. All right, I will talk. I guess I'll talk to you tomorrow, or maybe not.
Yeah, you can talk to me tomorrow, and I can talk to you. What do you think of that?
That would be good.
What are you going to do now? Finish your plaque assay?
Yeah. What else do you do after you do a live stream besides put overlay on a plaque assay?
That's become your thing for the last year now, hasn't it?
That and washing my ELISA. What do you want me to do? You want me to take them home?
I think it's great. No, I don't want you to take them home. Well, thank you, Amy.
No.
We appreciate you
Happy
being here.
Happy holidays. Have a Merry Christmas.
We'll see you next week on the stream, right, Amy?
Yeah, for sure. We'll see. But it'll be after Christmas and in between New Year's, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So,
good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Now let's see. What do I click here to get rid of? Oh, I got rid of that last message, which I wanted to do here. Will Novavax counter Omicron? I think it's likely that the T cells induced by Novavax will counter Omicron. We'll see, right? Because Omicron's going to be around for a while. But I think it will. I received my Moderna doses in March. Yeah, I got mine in February, March. 2 weeks ago, we went in for boosters. I took the J&J. Wondering if I did the correct choice. So the J&J is just because of the blood clots. And if you haven't got them in 2 weeks, you're fine. You're not going to have blood clots. I think you're okay. But antigenically, it's fine. That's why it's not been withdrawn. It's just that there's this risk and they want you to consider it. So you're fine, Leo. No problem. Considering that plastics are ubiquitous in food packaging and storage, is it really surprising we're consuming a lot of microplastic? No, the microplastics are coming from the plastic waste, like in the oceans, the plastic gyres. They grind against each other, and the microparticles made are taken up by fish. I don't know how the fruit take up the microparticles, but it's not just from the packaging, because these are apples that you take off a tree. I guess you put them in a polyethylene bag. I don't think it's going to get the plastics all the way into the fruit, of the apple. No. But I'm not a plasticologist. I'm a virologist. So I hear there have been 5.5 million variants identified on GISAID. Is that true? And that VOCs are identified with pseudovirus. Why don't they use the real virus? Okay, we can take care of this. So yes, there are over 5.5 million sequences on GISAID, and each one is a variant because each one is different. So a variant is none other than an isolate from a patient. Like my virus would be a variant compared to yours because the sequence would be slightly different. Even if it's one base, it's a variant. And pseudovirus, we take the spike. Well, the VOCs are identified based on the changes we see in the spike, because now we know what changes do what in terms of antibody neutralization and infectivity. Well, they think they know what it does for infectivity, but they don't. But then they put it into pseudovirus, and you can rapidly figure out, say, antibody resistance. Why don't they use authentic virus? You need a BSL-3. You need a high containment lab, and not everybody has that. I think they should be using authentic virus. I agree, because some people think that it's the same result and others don't. And if there's any question, I think you should do the authentic virus. I think we talked about Israel with fourth booster over 60. I don't think this is necessary. And as I said, when you have antibody levels are high, which happens after the boost, you're going to protect against infection. But they start to contract after months, and then you're no longer going to be infected, which is natural. That's the way vaccines work. But you're still protected against severe disease. So I don't understand why now they want to protect against infection where originally the vaccines were tested to prevent disease. And that's what Paul Offit said the other day. Thank you, Pamela, for your contribution. Really appreciate your support of the incubator in science education by scientists. If we crank our Paxlovid in enormous mass quantities, will that end the pandemic? Well, Amy left. So I'm going to say no, because I think we're going to have resistance arising within months. You heard it here. First AIDS, HIV, antiviral, AZT, within months we had resistance. One drug therapy is not good. Thank you, Jennifer, for your contribution. So Amy's gone, so I'll skip those questions. Thank you, Kerwin, for your contribution. You've spoken about the possibility that multiple vaccine shots could initiate autoimmune. I think I answered that a way back, so thank you for your contribution. Appreciate it. Wouldn't the pandemic be over in countries like the U.S. and Canada first? Well, the pandemic is a global outbreak, right? So you can't end it by ending it in just one or two countries. But they could certainly have fewer cases. severe hospitalization, that sort of thing. I don't care about positives anymore at this point. Why? Because we have vaccines that work. I don't care about positives. We have flu vaccines that kind of work, and we don't test for flu as routinely as we are now for this. You like Arthur Avenue? Arthur Avenue is pretty good, yeah. It is authentic. It's old school, right? And Italy is a modern thing made to make money for people. So, but Italy is 10-minute walk from the incubator. That's pretty good, right? I went the other day and I went crazy with all the stuff. I wanted to buy everything. They had 50 different kinds of panettone. 50. I want to try them all. I love panettone. If the new military corona vaccine is in stage 1, is it really something worth discussing? Mark, that's a great point. I have the same feeling for any vaccine that is currently being developed because it's going to be hard to test phase 2 and 3, right? But the military is going to push it forward for sure, right? And one can argue that the more vaccines, the better in many parts of the world. But Amy would say we have plenty of vaccine for the rest of the world. But that's not what I hear from everyone. So I'm not a supply chain person, so I don't know. I agree it's going to be tough. But I think it should be explored. It's a different platform, and it may give a broader immunity, although 2 properly spaced doses of mRNA is also really good. And all these suggestions from you guys about restaurant. I'm sorry that Amy left. Is there any evidence for how immunocompromised respond to vaccination? Well, first, Ian, there are different kinds of immunocompromised states, right? There are anywhere from NK and B cells and T cells to all of the above. There's innate immunocompromise. So it depends what you have, but if you have trouble making antibodies and T cells, then you don't respond well. So immunosuppressed patients for organ transplants don't respond well to vaccines. They don't make antibodies. Some of them respond with a 3rd dose, but not all of them. So they have to be kept very, very close eye on. If they have a positive, they have to be treated with monoclonal antibodies so they don't get very sick. I don't know. I really don't know the answer. If you have an inflammatory autoimmune disease, would a cytokine storm almost be inevitable? That's a recipe for it, right? Not being able to regulate your immune responses. Consequently, you have an inflammatory autoimmune disease. So, and you're not on anything that would suppress that. So, a storm from COVID, I presume you mean, right? Not from vaccination. So I think that's a likely scenario. Thoughts on Israel giving the 4th shot. So we've talked about that, but will the U.S. follow suit? I think not. I think that the 3rd dose was kind of a stretch here in the U.S. Paul Offit said it wasn't officially approved for everyone. It was just done. So I doubt they're going to do a 4th. No. I think not. Pfizer setback for children under 5. I don't know anything more than we discussed on the last twist. Paul Offit knows way more than I do about that. Why do you think the number of cases in South Africa is plummeting? Well, whenever there are spikes, there are troughs as well, right? You exhaust the susceptibles. And that's what's happened. It's in a certain population. It's infected them. They are now immune. And so there's no readily available host for the virus to find. It will find hosts eventually, and perhaps there'll be another spike at some point. But that's a simple explanation. It's all there is to it. Infection-induced immunity. What's happening with Amy's baking? Well, she gave me a big box. I have at the incubator a big box of the cookies she made. I should take a picture of it and show you next week. An amazing assortment of cookies, and they're all friggin' unbelievable. and she gave a box to bring home, and I gave it to my wife, and she immediately hid it. She said, "You're not getting these till Christmas." So they're amazing. And she made a panettone also, because I said we tried to make one last year, and we just made a mess of it. And so she made a gorgeous panettone. And I noticed someone here said Pandoro. So they also had Pandoro in this. If you go to Italy, there's a whole aisle full of Pandoro and panettone, 50 different kinds, and all different boxes and wraps. It is just gorgeous. I mean, it's kind of an embarrassment of abundance, right? But it's gorgeous. Thank you, Jaspel, for your contribution. And happy holidays. I'm glad you like our content. If you have a moment, give us a thumbs up on the little thing below the video. There are almost 900 of you here tonight, which is awesome, because I know it won't last forever, but I appreciate you being here. I'm convinced a vaccine-hesitant family member to get vaccinated got J&J. What should I tell him, or should I just be happy he got anything? Yeah, just be happy he got anything. That's fine. He will be fine. You know, there are those clotting effects, but they're rather rare and mostly in women. And so just be glad that he got a vaccine. He's going to need a booster, so he's going to have to get a shot in 6 months. What's the deal with the new Pfizer antiviral Paxlovid, a protease inhibitor? Is it just given authorization? It's only approved for certain groups, right? Paxlovid is, what is it authorized for? Okay, FDA, adults and for treatment of mild to moderate COVID in adults and pediatric patients 12 years of age or older with positive COVID-2 at high risk for progression to severe COVID. And you can initiate it as soon as possible, but no longer than 5 days after symptom onset. So you have to have high risk. You have to have risk factors, and otherwise you can't get it. It's not for everybody, in other words. I want to highlight this of Yash because we did highlight it earlier, but Dr. Fauci said that outcomes in cases are more important. I mean, I said this immediately when Cornell closed last week. It doesn't matter what positives there are. And to which someone said, oh, it doesn't matter, they're going to spread it to others. Yeah, to others who have mild infection and to non-vaccinated people who will get infected, but that's their choice. So number of cases doesn't stop testing so extensively, especially in campus situations where everyone's vaccinated. That's right. Biden's only releasing 500 million rapids after pressure, right? The press secretary was asked and she said no, and then they put pressure on. I think that's horrible. Everybody should have access to free rapids as well as free vaccines, which we have, and that's great. My 11-year-old got the youth dose Pfizer, will be 12 when his second dose. No, you would get an age-appropriate dose, for sure. Why do some animals rarely get sick? So deer don't appear to get sick. Rodents get disease, at least in the lab, but they all survive. They don't lose weight. But the virus is reproducing in them. It's not a matter of it not reproducing. You know, we have lots of viruses in us that reproduce well, and we don't get sick from them. And it's a puzzle why. I think they're held in check by the immune system so they don't get out of balance, and the immune system stays balanced as well. So I think that's part of the issue. But really, to be honest, we don't know. What are some of the titles in that stack of books behind Amy? So the stack behind Amy are Dixon's parasitology books. So we had to clean out Dixon's office a few weeks ago because someone else wants it, and he's been out for 2 years, probably not coming back. So they're all parasitology books. And what I'm doing is, which reminds me, I have to take care of this, I'm having movers bring them down to the incubator, and we're setting up a little library area in the incubator. We're going to have bookshelves and a nice chair and a light to sit in and read. So if Dixon wants to come and read his old books, he can do that. Did you hear RFK Jr. required proof of vaccination at his Christmas party? Okay. Why? I thought he didn't like vaccines. Only if he has to be in his family protected, right? So he's really hypocritical. Yeah. Is long COVID less likely if someone is vaccinated? So the studies that have so far come out say yes, it is much less frequent than if you're not vaccinated. It does still occur, but much less frequent. And the last clinical update from Daniel, he talked about that last week. Yeah, so I just want to emphasize that we've been pushing outcomes for a long time since we had vaccines. Once you have a vaccine, it doesn't matter who's positive. You're just chasing, what is the saying? Needles in a haystack. I don't know what, you don't need to test everybody. Can you answer these questions? Can the adenovector integrate into the genome and cause cancer later in life? No. It cannot, because, well, first of all, it doesn't. In most cases, they don't reproduce, so there's going to be very low levels of the genome present. I mean, they do get in the nucleus, but in those cells where they get into, many of the genes are missing that would do that. That would cause the cell to divide, and very unlikely. You could probably force it in the lab, but I think it's highly unlikely in people because the genome isn't replicating and key genes are missing. Pros and cons of adenovirus versus mRNA. Well, the mRNAs are remarkable in that they produce very high levels of antigen, and they do very well at inducing antibodies in T cells, as we see. And if you properly space the doses 6 months, you can take care of any variant that arises. They don't block infection after 6 months, but they prevent severe disease and hospitalization and death. Not 100%, but in the high 90s or the mid 90s, so they're good. Adenovector vaccines can do the same, but there are some side effects of those, particularly blood clotting, because the adenoviruses bind platelet factor 4, and that triggers autoantibody and clotting. The mRNA vaccines have a low rate of myocarditis, which is treatable. The blood clotting can be severe. 8 people have died. But the mRNA vaccine myocarditis is treatable. So I think they're both good vaccines. The J&J, unfortunately, now has the severe clotting side effects. So the FDA has said we prefer that you use the mRNA vaccines, but some people have allergies to the components of the mRNA vaccines. And so for that reason, having other options in the U.S. is a good idea, like Novavax and protein-based vaccines would be a good idea. Cases matter if people are going to end up with long COVID. No, if you, what is it going to do if you have no symptoms? You're not likely to end up with long COVID. And what does it matter if you diagnose those cases? All you know is that you have lots of infections and people close down. That's not for long COVID. That's just for protecting unvaccinated people. So I don't think so. I don't think that's correct. How long should fully vaxxed and boosted person isolate after a positive test? Yeah, I know 10 days seems excessive to me. And I agree, but that's the CDC policy. I think more likely it would be 4 or 5 days, because I don't think you're infectious beyond a day at best, and in most cases not. But hopefully this gets revised at some point. I agree with you. If an uninfected, unvaccinated person receives a first negative after testing positive, can they still be shedding? A PCR negative, I think you would like to have 2, or maybe coupled with an antigen test. Antigen is very good at determining if you're likely to be infectious or not. By the way, the free kits will need to be ordered on a website that's not existing yet. There you go. How much worse than Omicron can a new variant be? Well, I don't know how bad Omicron is. I think it's, on an unvaccinated person, it's as bad as the ancestral so far, from what I can tell. You can get severe disease and you can die, but most people getting infected are vaccinated, so they have moderate disease. In fact, if you look at the report out of South Africa, by the way, which says the infections are less likely to progress to the hospital, many of those are in vaccinated people, which is what you expect. So I think the vaccinated status confounds these kinds of studies. So I don't think it's going to get any worse. I don't think any of the variants made disease worse. I don't see any good evidence for that. I just think that we have a lot of unvaccinated people that are driving these outbreaks, and vaccinated people can be infected. They probably transmit at a very low rate, although Amy would disagree with me on that. So it's not clear to me that Omicron is rapidly spreading everywhere. It may not. We have to wait. It's going to take some time to see that. It's certainly starting to predominate in many places, right? But why would it signal the end of the pandemic? I'm not clear. It's not clear that this surge would not have happened without Omicron. I think if Delta were around, it would have done the same thing. This is a holiday-driven surge. It's not a variant-driven surge. There is no evidence. People like to think it's Omicron-driven, but there's no evidence. There's no good evidence for that. Why are some of the monoclonals not working? So the sites where the monoclonals bind a very short sequence in the spike protein. And one amino acid change is enough to prevent the monoclonal from binding efficiently. And so in Omicron, these are changed, and that's why they're not working. So I know that the GSK one that lasts up to a year still works. So that's good. And they may have to develop some others. I saw a story about the U.S. Army vaccine. They're saying it'll be effective against all variants. Yeah, so it's a protein vaccine. It's the receptor binding domain of spike, so it's not the whole spike. It's fused to ferritin, the cell protein ferritin. So ferritin binds iron normally, and then ferritin binds the ferritin receptor on the cell surface and brings iron into your cell. And so by binding it to ferritin, by linking the RBD to ferritin, it makes a multimeric particle, multivalent, which is good for improved antigenicity. And so this gives, in animal models, good antibodies, good T-cell responses. And the antibodies can neutralize all the variants they throw at it. So they're saying this should translate to effectiveness in a phase 2 and 3. That's what they mean by that. And it could very well be, but you have to do the trial because sometimes it doesn't parallel what you see in the animals. Yes, thank you. We did figure that out originally. The liver problems is from the ritonavir, right? So you don't need an integrase to integrate, right? So DNA can integrate without an integrase. The integrase is a retroviral protein that facilitates higher efficiency integration, but DNA can integrate. But there's not a lot of the adeno-DNA because it's not reproducing, right? Is it true that everyone's going to get Omicron or whatever? Well, wouldn't you have said everyone's going to get Delta last month, right? Even the vaccinated will get it. And it could be that Omicron, I don't know. I think it's still too early to tell. I don't think you can predict what these things are going to do. Something could come up. Some other variant could come up, or Omicron could fail. I don't know. It may or may not. Neighbors are saying that unvaccinated people who recovered have greater immunity than vaccinated. It's different immunity, but it's not the same in all people. But if you are unvaccinated and you recover, then you get one dose of vaccine, then you have really good immunity. So that guarantees it, the one dose of vaccine. Just being infected alone doesn't guarantee that really good immunity that you will then get when you get the dose of vaccine. A family member took J&J in March going for the Pfizer. Should she be fine with taking her one single J and now her booster? So, in my opinion, yes, we don't have the data for that, but it seems to me that if you do the long dosing, that should correct for having too closely spaced doses to begin with. So I think it should be okay. Any holiday plans? I have no holiday plans other than to edit some podcasts and have dinner with my family here, and we're not recording TWIV on Fridays. So today, Tuesday, do we record this week? Yeah. That'll come up on Sunday. And then next week we're going to record on Tuesday at TWIV. But also Daniels will be doing on the 2 Thursday. So nothing very different, no, to the consternation of my family, I think. But I enjoy going to the incubator and working there and getting it in shape. And my course is over next week, 2 more lectures, so I'll be doing that as well. Whatever happened to the pan-corona vaccine? Well, so RBD has cryptic epitopes that can give rise to pan-coronavirus antibodies. And I think this is still being worked on. So the current vaccines were made quickly enough so that we could stem the pandemic. And now people are backing up and doing more research. So it'll take longer. Remember, it takes a long time usually to make vaccines. So these will eventually be tested for sure. There are also standalones that don't require ritonavir. Yeah, so the molnupiravir doesn't need ritonavir. And others are being developed, yes. Am I considered boosted with 2 doses? So for Janssen, yes, a second dose is considered boosted. That's right. So I see all the posters say you need a second dose of Janssen at least 2 months from the first. And you need a third dose of mRNA at least 6 months from the second. Would you get on an airplane? It's 92% likely to arrive without crashing. Well, it's not a fair comparison because no vaccine is as good as the COVID vaccines. Only the HPV, human papillomavirus vaccines, really prevent infection. But we're lucky. The first polio vaccines only prevented polio 50% of the time. So that's not the right comparison. I understand you're trying to be dramatic, but it doesn't work that way. No, vaccines aren't that good. We're lucky they're in the 90s. Well, I agree that we want to count people who have issues, and long COVID is an issue, but I think we have to balance that with hysteria. I mean, closing schools is absurd. It's absurd when the vast majority of the students are going to have mild illness. So you would argue that we're going to have long COVID in some of those. It's not clear that closing would make any difference anyway. How long does the boost benefit last? So it depends what you mean by boost benefit, but it's a good question. So do you mean preventing infection? So for 6 to 8 months, the high antibody levels you have after the boost will prevent you from being infected. So you're not going to have what they call a breakthrough. I hate to use the word, but that way you recognize it. After that, you'll be infected. But then you're not going to get serious disease because your T cells protect you against that. The question is, now that you have the boost, you can make a broader, higher affinity antibody against more variants, any variant that you see. So the question is, will that even reduce the hospitalization further than 92% because of that? Because you'll be able to get rid of any virus that comes in quicker. So I think you'll always be protected against severe disease for many years. If you want to be protected against infection, I would say 6 to 8 months. A previous SARS-CoV-2 infection will generate neutralizing antibodies, then the infected individual is vaccinated. Why these infection-induced antibodies don't neutralize the spike generated from the vaccine? Well, the spike is just a protein, so there's no neutralization. Neutralization occurs when an antibody blocks attachment of virus to cells. And so the spike protein is produced in cells, and it's chopped up, and it's presented by antigen-presenting cells, pieces of it. So the concept of neutralization doesn't apply there. Thank you, Mario. I will let Amy know these are for her for flowers. Do labs automatically test for Omicron? Well, what do you mean automatically test? You mean if they get a sample, a nasopharyngeal swab, and they say we want a COVID test? So yes, they should be testing for the dominant, so Delta and Omicron. Yes, with the increase in Omicron in the U.S., then they've been instructed to look for Omicron. Yes, but if they haven't changed their primers, there can be also spike dropout, which means you don't get a band, and then that can also be an indication that Omicron is there. Will Amy be on any upcomings? I don't think yet, but I haven't put the schedule that far out yet. Should I be concerned seeing unvaccinated family who have met with unvaccinated and recently infected SARS-2 family that just tested negative before they flew over? My family is vaxxed. Well, they should. If you're concerned, and you have a reason to be, you should get tested. Everyone should get tested frequently, every other day, with a rapid test. I know it's expensive, but if you want to see each other, that's what you need to do. So the idea with autoimmunity, with continued boosting, is that as you drive the maturation of the antibody response, they may end up making antibodies against your self proteins. And so that's the concern. But I think that you'd have to get to quite a few doses to do that. And I don't know what the number is. So if you're continually maturing the immune response, the somatic hypermutation that changes antibody genes could make them recognize your own proteins. Thank you, Victoria, for your contribution. I got 2 shots of Mrna in February. I got a Pfizer booster October. Will I survive Omicron? You have a 92% chance of surviving Omicron. And if you catch it early, you'll be even better off. You have no known underlying conditions. You're 40 years old, so they're not going to give you monoclonals most likely. But I think with your vaccination history, you'll be fine. Does it still make sense to wait 90 days after monoclonal before getting the booster? That's the recommendation. I think that makes sense, yes. Yes, several universities announced virtual classes. Yeah, January, Columbia too. I'm very disappointed. I wanted to teach in person. Now we're going to have to start on bloody Zoom. I would love to see you on Rogan. Yeah, it will never happen because he doesn't want to be informed. He wants hysteria and drama, which give more downloads. If Amy and I go on, people will yawn and turn it off. So you guys are all smart to be here, all 900 of you, because you want to hear from people who know what they're talking about, i.e. virologists. This is again about the Army COVID vaccine. The papers are all published. You can find them, Mark. They're very easy to find. Okay, Vanity's coming to the incubator on Monday. You're going to make me a turban. I forgot what for, but you can remind me. I'm sorry, I'm not laughing about this. I'm laughing about the next one. I hear recommendations of aspirating when vaccinating. Nurse who gave me my booster didn't know what I was talking about. in the UK. So most shots, in some countries they do aspirate, which avoids putting vaccine into a blood vessel, which could increase the chance of clotting. So the idea is that if you put the adenovirus vectors into the blood, they will bind platelet factor 4 and stimulate this clotting reaction. And so if you pull back on the syringe, you assure that you're not in the vein. But most places don't do that. And I think it's not clear to me that would reduce the number of clotting issues if you did. In the U.S., we don't do it. And, we have a certain rate, and I just don't. Daniel has never said that he thinks that would be ameliorated by aspirating. And, the FDA didn't say to do that in their recent recommendation. TwivTalk, yeah, that's pretty good. I think I would be sued if I used that, though, because it's too close to TikTok. But I would love to have as the title for these things, TwivTalks. Not happening, right? How about Twivlets? The TwivTalk is great, Andrew. It's really good. Here we go. Boosted wife tested positive. Boosted me negative. She's barely sick. Wouldn't have registered pre-COVID. 6-year-old also. Yeah, vaccines work. They do. They do in most cases, 92% of the time, which is really amazing. Oh, yes, of course. This is from, the Marty Feldman movie, right? Young Frankenstein, right? Yep. Virulence, we talked about that. Yes, the Ferritin looks promising in the papers. It looks good. I looked at them this morning. 2 viruses typically evolve to be more or less virulent. Well, I don't know of any example of more increased virulence. It's always the thing you can look at in the press and you see, the virus has become more virulent, but in the scientific literature, it's not, at least in the reputable scientific literature. So if you take my course, I will tell you viruses do not become more virulent unless that helps them transmit. Transmission is a great selector, but it's very hard to prove that inherent transmissibility of a virus increases. But it could be that if, say, the virus reproduces to higher levels to achieve more transmissibility, then that could cause more virulence. But I've never seen that happen, which is not to say that it won't happen, but so far we haven't seen it. Reduction in virulence makes sense to prolong the life of the host, increase transmission, but we really don't see that either. So maybe we have an opportunity to monitor it during this pandemic. So I really, I think Columbia's chicken, but mostly they're worried about lawsuits, right? That some kid will get long COVID and the parent will sue the university. That's all that's driving this decision. They will tell you, no, we're concerned about the safety of our students. We have vaccines that work. There's no need to do this. Thank you, DR, for your contribution. Is J&J plus 1 Moderna really booster or just vaxxed round 1? Well, I think so Offit said the other day the J&J was meant to be a 2-dose. And if you put them 4 weeks apart, then it wouldn't be good. You'd need a 3rd dose. But if you put the 2 6 months apart, then you're good. That's the way I'm viewing it. Thank you, Gog Stan, for your contribution. Happy holidays to you, too. Can a normal person get a nucleocapsid antibody test to see if you had COVID? Yes. So it depends how long ago, because it could be that the antibodies have contracted below the level of detection of whatever test you're using, and then you might not see them. So you might have been infected, but it might not detect it. But it is worth doing the test. Could it be used to prove immunity? No. At this point, we can't use it to prove immunity. Thank you, Cat Vaxxer, for your contribution. Look at all those cool things. Merry Christmas, Buon Natale, Feliz Navidad, Feliz Natal, Joyeux Noël, Frohe Weihnachten. That one I can't do. Thank you both. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. So the hospitalizations are mainly unvaccinated people by far. So that's the problem, Tony. Why do we have to get our society messed up for unvaccinated people? Now, I understand the long COVID issue. I don't know quite what to do with that. But again, we're basically doing this for unvaccinated people. The hospitals are filling up because of unvaccinated people, not vaccinated people. If everyone were vaccinated, the hospitals wouldn't be filling up, okay? So this is just an unacceptable situation. Getting through the Amy comments here. Isn't the boosting just to keep damping cases till hospitals can cope? The boosting is to correct the close spacing of the first 2 doses. That's the way I look at it. That's the way it should be looked at. It should not be looked at trying to prevent infection. Because that's not going to last. And that wasn't the goal of the vaccines to begin with. Could the deer have gotten COVID from mosquitoes? I doubt it, because usually viruses have to reproduce in the arthropod vector in order to be transmitted, and there's no evidence that they do so in mosquitoes. So probably not. Yeah. Isn't saying a third dose giving antibody to protect against Omicron setting a standard titer for protection against the data? No, because you just don't know what the T-cell contribution is, right? No matter what the antibody titer is. And it's only, as I said, the high titer lasts for only 6 to 8 months, and then you're going to get infected, and you're going to get the same 92% protection against hospitalization, maybe more. I doubt it. But that's the question. We have to monitor disease after the boost. Can we use mRNA to vaccinate against the flu spike protein? For sure. The flu vaccine is not as good as the mRNA vaccines are against COVID, for sure, because the flu vaccines wane as antigenic variants arise for flu. They lose their ability to prevent serious disease and hospitalization. That's why we changed the flu vaccine. I would say if the current COVID vaccines lose their ability to prevent severe COVID, then we should change them. But there's no evidence that that's happening yet. CDC has those data. There's still good protection. What Omicron will do, we'll see. We don't know yet. It's too early to tell. Is it true Omicron could have arisen in a mouse? The mouse, the House of Mouse. Isn't that Disney? There is some suggestion. There's a preprint which looks at the genome that we have of Omicron. They're very different from the other variants. They're on their own little branch of the tree. And if you look at rodent coronaviruses, the ones that have been isolated from rodents, or have been propagated in rodents, they're more similar to that, although there aren't as many of those. So yes, there is some suggestion that it could. There's circumstantial evidence. Genomic evidence, though, doesn't prove anything. You'd have to really isolate the ancestor in rodents, and I doubt that that's going to happen. So I would say it's an interesting idea with little support. I got my initial shots at a hospital-run clinic, boost at retail pharmacy, had no reaction to the first, nothing to booster, chance for lower efficacy related to storage. You're worried that they didn't store it properly. Who knows? I think that's a worry that, unless you have the proof, you really shouldn't deal with it, because you're going to drive yourself crazy, right? What do you think of Monopurevir? Well, it wasn't as effective as Paxlovid in the study, the hospitalization study. So I'm not sure what an impact it's going to have upon wider use. 40% of a deer population in a study having SARS-2. Yes, I'm aware of that, and that's quite interesting. We're going to have one of the authors of that study on in the new year. And Japan has its own dominant variant, which shows you that, just because a variant is dominant in one place doesn't mean it's going to dominate everywhere, and that certainly has happened before. Thank you, Oak Ridge, for your contribution. Why are the cases in South Africa not rising? As I said earlier, it's infected. Outbreaks burn out always because susceptibles are exhausted. There may be more around, but the virus hasn't reached them, right? It's a random process, and human behavior controls part of it. They'll be back. That's why it's doing that. It's not that the virus infected everyone and made them immune. Absolutely not. Would it be fair to say that someone who is infected with Omicron would have immunity to the other variants? No, not necessarily. They are different, so they may not confer immunity. I think the ancestral virus is still the best immunogen. But we will see as these incidences. So Delta is still around, so we can answer this question. I wish Amy could come to dinner with two crazy Brett Weinstein worshiping sisters. So Brett is posed himself as an expert on the origin of SARS-CoV-2. He's not a virologist. Stay in your lane. He is an evolutionary biologist, and he can say lots of fancy words and convince you that he knows where SARS-CoV-2 came from. But he's wrong. He hasn't thought about viruses for 40 years, which is what you need to do. Just take my course and you'll understand. Tell him to take my course and they'll understand. Or at least, so what lecture would be a good one? Evolution and Emergence. Tell him to listen to that. You had the privilege of hearing about her research in person. Oh, that's interesting. That's cool. When did you do that? So Cromer tweeted that vaccine effectiveness was gone because vaccinated are having symptomatic disease. That's BS. But earlier he pointed out that phase 3 VA was for severe disease, so he's changing goalposts too. So this is the problem with Twitter. Stay away from bloody Twitter discussions because people just spew nonsense. They move out of their lanes. They speculate. And then people who don't understand think it's all gospel, and it's not. I'm a big fan of Twitter democratizing science, but boy, in a pandemic, what a disaster. I don't really go on and chat there anymore. Thank you so much for your contribution. You want Brienne? So Brienne will do one. It's not going to be on permanently. This is Amy's show. But I think we could have a separate Q&A with Brienne sometime. Can an IM vaccination give IgA in the upper airway after the immune response matures? Yes. And it's been shown that some of the COVID vaccines indeed induce IgA in the upper airways. So it is, but I think it would be better and perhaps more long-lasting if you'd had an intranasal spray in terms of memory IgA-producing cells. What data do we need to know if Omicron is inherently more mild? Well, it's very hard because we have a lot of immune people, right? So they're most of the people who are being infected. And they are having, by definition, mild disease. So I'm not sure you could do it. You'd have to study only unvaccinated people, if that's what you would need to do. But then even then it's flawed because now is a different population from those infected with Delta. And Delta was different from Alpha. And you can use all the fancy software you want to correct for all that, but it's not necessarily going to do it. And so very hard to do virulence projections. Now, it would be nice if you could go in the lab, but all the animal models for severe COVID are not good. So at this point, we don't have a way of getting at that. So it's not going in the textbooks, folks, at least not my textbook. Thank you, Callista. Hello again. Exposed by several friends. I have symptoms, negative rapid test for 4 days. Is it possible I'm just not shedding? Yeah. Negative rapid test, you're probably not making enough virus. And the symptoms may be not really COVID. Maybe there's something else, or maybe it's nothing at all. So I'm not worried about it. I think those negative tests mean something. The Minax now is still valid for Omicron. That's correct. How did Omicron spread from South Africa? If only fully vaxxed people can get on a plane. Well, it was spreading before we knew about it, right? And there are probably some means of transport where you don't need to be vaccinated. Not sure that applies to everyone. But you could be a carrier, right? One person out of the 400 on the plane could have just been exposed to Omicron. It's not replicating in them, and they carry it to New York and deposit it. Probably a rare event. We don't know. It's a good question. The Quebec government is floating the idea of asking asymptomatic healthcare workers to stay on the job if they test positive. While other provinces are considering test to stay. I think test to stay is a good idea because you have a lot of unvaccinated people in the hospital, right? And even though the chance of transmitting to them is low, I would want to be careful, especially in hospitalized people, right? Would you go along with mRNA boosters that have T-cell epitopes? Yes, but again, it's going to be a while before they get developed. It's harder and harder to develop new vaccines. Thank you, Luigi, for your contribution. 2 Pfizers, April and July. Boost, January. Exposed Sunday, positive today. Any advice? So I don't know what kind of test you have. If it was a PCR or antigen test, but I would repeat it in 2 days, say. And if you have underlying issues, you should seek monoclonals if you have things that would predispose you to severe COVID. But I think you're going to have mild disease because you have had 2 doses. And we know that 2 doses, even if inappropriately spaced, will still prevent you from having hospitalization and death most of the time. Not 100%, right? When you or your descendants write the SARS-CoV-2 chapter in the virology textbook, will you cover the variants? Are these important through time or just to spin us up? So far, they're not going to last the test of time. So here's, every year we have flu variants arise, right? Which are antigenic variants, and they make us change the vaccine frequently because we start to see increases in severe disease, influenza. And those don't make news, of course. And they don't make the textbook either because the only principle is that antigenic variation happens with flu. We're not quite sure. So these are certainly antigenic variants of SARS-CoV-2. And that's all we can say so far. The other properties that they have are not going in the book because they're not proven. I am not saying that they're more transmissible based on an epidemiological study that shows that there was an outbreak coincident with the discovery of a variant. That's not how science works. And I'm not sure what it contributes to public health measures either. So it's going to be a while. We're going to write the next version in 5 years, but I don't know if we're going to have the answers by then. Thank you, Westfield 90, for your contribution. Been a tough 2 years, but we stick to the science, and Amy makes me do that when I wander off a bit. Not wander off from science, but I start to speculate. She pulls me back. Thank you, Ditching. Really appreciate your support. Many viruses, about 20% of human cancers are associated with viruses. I don't think SARS-2 has any carcinogenic potential. No, I don't see any of the attributes, oncogene capture, T antigen-like proteins, chronic cytokine production like HIV. I don't see it happening. I could be surprised, but I would say at this point, no. If I were in charge, what would I have done? Well, if I were in charge long enough ago, I would have had antivirals made after SARS-1, which would have stopped this pandemic in China. But if I was in charge at the beginning and I had no say in that, then I immediately would have instituted widespread testing to see just where the virus was. Frequent testing, and that was botched in this country. I'd have everybody wearing face masks, but of course you can't do that in the U.S. That would be my policy. But I think the testing out of the gate would be really important, and we didn't do that for a long time, and that let it spread extensively. We should have started testing in December when we first heard about it, and then start isolating to try and restrict it. The vaccine development went well. I think I would have no quibble with that, but the testing was a botch. Thank you, Ian, for your contribution. New Zealand is 91% eligible vax, which is 75% of total. I think you're probably not at the point yet where if a virus were if SARS-CoV-2 were introduced, it would not spread. So you have to be careful. I'm sure you're being very careful, but I suspect you're going to have small outbreaks in the future. I mean, you can't prevent travel forever, but you can make sure people are tested and vaccinated and so forth. But, I mean, you have the advantage of being an island, but you're not isolated because people come in and out. So eventually you will have infections. But it's great that you have a high percentage of vaccinated. Get more, though. Thank you, Elizabeth. Really appreciate your contribution. Autoimmune condition. We answered that. Yeah. We just said depends on what the bad flare is. Yep. Do you foresee that there being new updated vaccines? So the key is the hospitalization and death. Right now, that's staying level. If that starts to increase, so the percentage of effect, VE against hospitalization of death, when that goes below 90, maybe below 80, then we should maybe update the vaccine, not just do a booster. All right, so Brian is pretty sick. So I think, I can't remember what your original question was, but maybe it's obvious from what I was giving you as the alternatives. Our annual boosters coming. I don't think we need them. As I said, as long as the VE against hospitalization remains constant, we don't need them. How would you respond to this notion? Coworker thinks the vax are dying in equal number as unvaxxed. No, that's not true. I follow the reporting from 26 states in the U.S., and the unvaxxed are dying in much greater numbers than the vaccinated. That's just wrong. The chart is published every day on the Times. How long do you think before the virus evolves resistant to Paxlovid? No, it's not. It's not resistant at all. Protease inhibitors for sure select resistant variants. We use them for other viruses, and when used alone, you get resistance. There's no question about it. So I would say in a few months we're going to see resistance to Paxlovid. Okay, I said that earlier. Yeah. Is an ovine model suitable for studying vaccine effects in pregnant women and neonates? I think it's kind of far away from humans, right? And I'm not sure that is really typically used. Sheep? No, I don't think so. I'd like to see the data, but I think not. You don't need a Omicron vaccine. The ancestral vaccine works just fine. There's no need to introduce a new one. Are we likely to see a more severe version? No. It will not get more severe. And it has not yet. I don't believe any of the data on any of the variants. Why? I can give you 5 reports that say Delta is more virulent. 5 say it's less. They're all done in different populations with different methodology. It's a mess. It's a bloody mess. They shouldn't be publishing this stuff. They shouldn't be reporting it. Can you elaborate on how you might test positive for COVID after vaccination without being a COVID positive? So if it's a PCR test, it's a false positive. The primers are amplifying off target, or there was a mistake done. You just need to repeat it or take an antigen test, which really is not as sensitive, and it tells you if you're actively replicating virus. So I think at the moment, and MITRE wants to know PCR versus antigen. PCR is very sensitive. So if you have one of these borderline infections, if you're vaccinated and you get exposed, PCR will pick up some RNA, which is not necessarily replicating, but antigen tests will be positive when virus is replicating. If virus is not replicating, it's not likely to be positive. Ideal spacing between first and second dose is 6 months, but of course you have to balance that between the risk of being infected. So if you can isolate or stay out of the public for a while, 6 months would be the best. If I have a positive PCR, does it mean I had antibodies at the time, and how is that different from rapid antigen tests? So positive PCR means you have nucleic acids. It can be very early in the infection before. Remember, you need 7 to 12 days to make some antibodies. So the PCR can be positive before that. But the antigen test will be positive because you're making viral protein. Does Omicron justify taking stronger measures in terms of PPE? No, I think we should just be all wearing face masks. N95s are great if you can get them. I would have worn them pre-Omicron. I don't think this has variant or any variant had any particular ability to go through one face mask versus another. N95s filter more than other kinds of face masks, surgicals or cloth for sure, but I don't think the variant makes a difference. I don't see any data that suggests that. Thank you, Jerome, for your contribution. Really appreciate it. Okay, we need to start wrapping up. Well, maybe we'll do 10 minutes more. Okay. Rob, thank you. And thank you for your contribution. I really appreciate it. We get a lot of repeat questions, which I understand, because you don't get your question answered. So that's why I have to scroll through a lot. If your job didn't require you to get boosted, would you have gotten? So we got boosted before we knew that Columbia would require it, because I thought that the data out of Ontario, which said that the boost corrects the inappropriate spacing between the first and second doses, I think that was reason enough, even though there were no hospitalization data associated with that study, which I would have liked to see. But I thought that amount of evidence was enough for me. And that's it, just one boost. And then the next day, Columbia made its change. So we did it independently. Thank you, Fluid Systems. Really appreciate your support. And thank you, J-Cup. You passed your virology exam. I hope you did more than pass. I hope you did very well, but I'm glad that we helped in any way. Viruses can evolve by mutation or recombination. What's the relative contribution of mutation versus recombination? So mutation is far more common than recombination. Recombination can be high, but mutation is higher. And you can have changes at every base in every genome after reproduction in a single cell. So that's the difference there. If smallpox got out of a lab, I seriously doubt we could vax it away again. It depends how far it got. So, the U.S. is stockpiling vaccines and 2 antivirals, enough for everybody in the U.S. in case of a leak. But it's a good question because we have so much hesitancy now than we did during the smallpox campaign. You might be right, yeah. Third dose is really just the second re-administered at the proper spacing. That's the way I view it, in fact, yeah. Is it possible to achieve sterilizing immunity with more than 3x, like 3 doses? I don't think the number of doses will give you permanent sterilizing immunity. I think the antibody levels contract after each dose. So after a certain number, you're not going to improve anything. Thank you, Video 9, for your contribution. How much more risk of death is there by not getting boosted? It's a good question. We don't know. The data are just starting to come out. I based my decision based on antibody tests only, and that's not the whole story. You really want to know about protection against disease. So are you risking your life? I can't answer that because I don't know how old you are. I don't know if you have comorbidities. If you're young and healthy, it's less of a risk than you're older and you have comorbidities. Then you should get a boost just to correct for the incorrect spacing of the first 2 doses. My mom is unvaxxed. I am home from studies over Christmas. I'm double vaxxed. Should I get the booster or do you recommend waiting for 6 months? No, 5.5 months is fine. You can get a booster now. Yeah. 5-6 months is okay. How is Novavax different? So Novavax is actually the protein. It's the spike protein that is made in cells in the lab and purified and mixed with an adjuvant and injected into your shoulder muscle, whereas the mRNA is the mRNA. It's coding for the protein. So your cells in your body make the protein for you. I don't know anything about the Sinovac versus Omicron. I haven't seen any data on that yet. It was pretty good versus other variants, though. But I think the neutralization is going to be low. But the question is, what are the T cells going to do? I just don't know that yet. I'm not sure anyone knows. For someone that's a near complete hermit and careful when I do rarely have to interact with strangers, is it wise to wait for new updated vaccines? No, it's going to be at least a year before there are new updated vaccines. I think early next year, as you heard, that we'll have probably Novavax and maybe another, but you could wait till early January perhaps if you were not interacting with the public. And see what they're like. I think Novavax is quite interesting. It looks very good. If you started a SARS-CoV-2 infection with clonal virus, how many variants might you have by the end of a typical course of the disease? Oh, in a person, if you put... Well, the problem is if you put one virus particle in, it probably wouldn't take, right? So you'd have to put say 10,000 to 100,000. So you already could have 100,000 different viruses. And then when it comes out of them, you can have... So we did a paper on Tweevo today that really addressed that. You can have hundreds of variants in there. Well, and every virus could be different after one round of reproduction in a single host. And this kind of variation we don't see by the kind of consensus sequencing that's done for the variants. You don't see the fine granular change in the population, heterogeneity in the population. Can't the CRISPR tools edit corona out of our DNA? Well, the coronavirus doesn't go in your DNA, so CRISPR tools are not useful for that. Nope. Well, this is interesting. I did research in microplastics, wanted to know if they could get into fruits and vegetables, but COVID stopped the project. So it does get into fruit and vegetables. And my pick on TWIV last week was an article that talked about that. There's quite a bit. There are like 250,000 plastic nanoparticles per gram of apple throughout the whole apple. It's pretty scary. OPV isn't sufficient to prevent most poliovirus infections. No, you still get infected. You just don't develop viremia and you don't develop paralysis. Despite all other possible advantages, wouldn't immune evasion alone make Omicron much more fit than Delta? It might, but that's speculating, right? So we don't know for sure, and I want to know before I put it in a textbook. But yeah, we would think that that would be the fitness advantage. But is there something else? And so far, we don't know for any of the variants what that something else is. Are there any vaccines good at preventing infection long term? So only the HPV vaccine I'm aware of is good at preventing, and I think to some extent the measles vaccine, but none of the others. Thank you, Calix Yukon, for your contribution. Appreciate it. So this statement, Omicron appears to have more than twice the spread, is not really correct because it doesn't control for population effects, people getting together for the holidays, right? So I don't think intrinsically we know anything about the spreading ability of Omicron. All we know is what it does in a population at holiday time when people are getting together. The spike Ferritin is protein. It is a protein platform, whereas the mRNA is a nucleic acid platform. My daughter had COVID in August. Friday, she was exposed to 2 classmates who were positive. Considering she's had COVID, can she still shed a high viral load to the rest of the family? Most likely not. But, you can't ever be 100%. Someone who works on the Cuban vaccine on Twitter, that would be cool. I would very much like to do that. Yeah. Thank you, Miter1, for your contribution. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I heard that Ontario is doing boosters at 84 days. I think this is insane because they're the one that published the data that convinced me that 6 months is the key, 5 to 6 months. Hey, I hear that the government is not acting in everyone's best interest. Is Israel's 4th shot to maintain high antibody in older people? Yes, I think that's it. It's changing the goal of the original vaccine to prevent infection, not disease, which is not really a good idea. Have you read The Codebreaker? No, I didn't. I've read the Jobs book by Isaacson, but this is about Jennifer Doudna, right? No, I read Sam's book. So her former colleague wrote a book with her, which I liked. The podcast is mentioned. Cool. TWIV, that's great. In what context? I could look, so you don't have to answer. What amount of daily deaths, hospitalization do you think would be acceptable to go back to the new normal? I don't have a number for you. I'm sorry. I think last week Amy said 1 in 100,000 population rate. We should be getting a weekly care package in the mail from CDC with surgical masks and rapid tests. Amen. I agree. I totally agree with you. Could you get a SARS-CoV-2 infection if you butchered a deer that was infected? Yes, you could. So get vaccinated. I don't know how deer got it. They socialize with other 4-legged mammals. They could, and maybe they socialize with cats and dogs. They could have been infected. That's plausible, sure. Do vaccines stimulate IgA? Yes. to different extents, for sure. As we said earlier, IM injection can stimulate, but intranasal would be even better. I just canned 10 quarts of venison. I think the pressure canning process, heat and pressure, you're okay. Now, of course, you were handling the meat, so you could be infected, but presumably you're vaccinated, so you'll be okay. Do you think a 6-year-old should be vaccinated from a disease that is extremely rare to severe? So it is, yes. If it were my kid, I'd vaccinate him, and because I don't want that rare case to be my kid. Do you? And if you did, you would feel like garbage. I guarantee it. So don't, pull this argument on me because it's not valid whatsoever. Got tested today, negative, rapid, antibody positive. I wanted to take the booster. Should I wait? I'm not sure that you would get an antibody for an infection test. Are you sure it was an antigen? So I'm a little confused. But if you are certainly positive, don't take the booster right now. You should wait a couple of weeks. Yes, many places are running out of monoclonals. That's absolutely true. It's a problem. Thank you for your contribution. I'm glad you think I'm a good man, even though I get cranky from time to time. Why is the chimpanzee adenovirus not rejected? Well, all viruses are rejected in a way, right? Because they're foreign. And a chimp ad is as foreign as a human ad is to us, especially if you haven't seen either before. So we make immune responses, and that's what rejection of an organ is. It's an immune response. One in the house has Omicron, medium cold symptoms. I'm negative per rapid test. We are triple vaxxed. Should we isolate? 4 to 5 days most, I would say. I would just wear masks, frankly. Alan Dove said on Twiv recently he doesn't think we'll be vaccinated in 5 to 10 years. So as the population becomes largely immune, the severe disease will decline to where it's negligible and we won't have to vaccinate. And then as you are born, you get infected. And as we know, the severe infections are less frequent at a young age. You'll be immunized and that'll be it for life. Yeah. If you want to get treatment for long-haul COVID, a positive test is essential. That's fine. I think on an individual level it makes sense. I'm just talking about closing universities for this. That doesn't make sense to me. Daniel Griffin, we asked him this question. If you have MS, you're not at risk for more severe disease. Unless you have something else, of course, right? Every variant of concern led to a surge. Too much of a coincidence. Well, Tony, I'm sorry you think so, but that's not how science works. Science doesn't work by coincidence. The surges were all for human behavioral reasons, not because the virus did anything different. So I disagree 100% with you. I've been saying it for the last year. And more importantly, Amy agrees as well. And as you know, she's always right. There are statements that Omicron has an infection ratio 6, which is higher than Delta, which is 5. It's not scientifically proven at all. These are observational numbers that don't really mean anything. If you're vaccinated and exposed to a variant, but the vaccine works and the antibodies fight off before you get sick, does that response boost your antibodies more? Yeah, it does, actually. You got it. Thank you, Margaret, for your contribution. Really appreciated. I got double vaxxed with Pfizer in May, got a positive nucleocapsid last month, haven't had any symptoms throughout the pandemic. Should I get a booster? Double vaxxed and infected. Nope, you're good. You're good. And all I do know is this lockdown is depressing. And that's the point I'm trying to make. We have vaccines that work. Stop locking down. There's no need to do that. And we have to figure out what to do for long haul. I agree, but we cannot shut down society. people are fed up with it. And I would say if we didn't have vaccines that we would have to do it, but we do. We do have vaccines, and we should understand that this allows us to get back to our lives. Thank you, Lisa, for your contribution. No, I like doing this so it doesn't exhaust me. I'm good. As you see, I'm kind of keeping going here because I want to see how far down we can get. Isn't the amount of somatic hypermutation happening no matter what? No. So when you have an antigen coming into a lymph node, it generates germinal centers in which the somatic hypermutation happens. So it's just happening when you have a foreign antigen coming in you. It doesn't happen all the time, no. Holiday-driven surge, but we didn't see case spikes like this last holiday season. Well, not every time of the year is the same. There are environmental differences and slight differences in population as well. So, and before vaccines, we were definitely sheltering more. So it's not the same. You can't compare them. Is it possible the large number of Omicron mutations were actually incremental? Yes, they were certainly incremental somewhere in nature, but we didn't pick them up. We just picked them up once they became dominant, right? SARS-CoV-2 was not created in the lab. Is it completely out of the question that we didn't edit the genome and it escaped? It's completely out of the question. If that turned out to be true, I would quit doing all of this and you'd never see me again. No, I wouldn't, but it's out of the question. Nobody could do that. Absolutely not. If you want, I mean, there are plenty of people who say it's possible, but it's just they want to get airtime and they want to be recognized for saying that. But no. You could spell it Twivtok and then it's not copyright. I don't know. I'm not a copyright expert. I bet if I asked a copyright lawyer, they will tell me I'm living on the edge with that, right? Thank you, Joe, for your contribution. 3 more years. That's what Amy says. You know, but if we could get more people vaxxed, there would be far fewer variants arising, and this would end. Convince people to get vaccinated, please. The vaccines were not tested to reduce transmission, tested to prevent disease. So how can we change that? That's the way the vaccines were designed. And by adding boosters, that's not changing it. You don't want to give people every 6 months a booster. That's not working. Do all paid messages get read? Well, I try to thank everyone who gives a contribution. I don't say you have to give a contribution to get a question asked. However, the reality is we have almost 1,000 people here, and I couldn't in 2 hours get through 1,000 questions. So here we go. Vanity, who knows about this? You don't have to be fully vaxxed to fly. On some airlines, the crew doesn't have to be vaxxed. So there you go. That's how Omicron can spread. Thank you, Vanity Nutrition. Do you think there could be issues with the recommended quantity and timing? I haven't been able to find dose response information. Well, you can find dose response in the preclinical animal studies. But yeah, one of the side effects is myocarditis. We don't know the reason for that, but the dosing timing is definitely 3-4 weeks is not right. It's too soon. 6 months is much better. Here's someone with a sense of humor. Well, many of you have. Is there any end to the panettone variants? No. Apparently, you can make a lot of panettones. That's just great. Variety, you just type your question in, like you said. How can we ask questions? You did ask one. Variety, if I see you coming up, I'll answer it for sure. I'm second guessing whether to spend Christmas with my brother and his extended family. His SIL is recovering from COVID, knowing the unvaccinated family, many exposed. Yeah, if there are a lot of unvaccinated, if you don't want to get any kind of COVID, even a mild one, you might not want to do it. But if you don't mind getting a mild COVID, then do it. A lot of these things we have answered. Do you feel booster was more critical for J&J people versus Pfizer? I don't know if I can answer that. I think it's important for both. But, the Pfizer mRNA effectiveness it was higher than J&J, so maybe that's a slight nod to that. Thank you, Environmental, for your contribution. Glad you found it, and I want more people to find it because I think we give good info, which is more in depth than you're going to find elsewhere. Cat and mouse game with COVID. Yeah, I can understand that, but that's partly because every time there's a variant, it gets overblown before we know anything about it. Of course, there's an end. It could be another 3 years, but I think it's a slowly reducing issue, so it's not going to be a light switch. But yes, it'll be over at some point. There's no question. I guarantee it. Will you cover the Hong Kong study? When it's peer-reviewed, yes, because right now it's deeply flawed. And this 70x is BS that everyone's just repeating, but they have no time zero, and the PFU measurement is wrong. It should be per cell, not per ml. So hopefully they fix it. If not, we'll trash it in our TWIVs and tell you why. Thank you, Michael. Appreciate your contribution. CT, anything above 34, 35, you're not likely to be transmitting. You're either at the end or you could be very early on, right? So you have to take that into account. Yes, we talked about Israel and shot 4. We are not in favor of it. Novavax spaced 6 months. I don't know. I don't remember the spacing for Novavax. I just don't remember. If it's 3-4 weeks, then that's probably not good. Why the South Africa, UK seem low on Omicron hospitalizations? Because most people are vaccinated. Break it down to unvaccinated people, and I'll bet a lot of the hospitalizations are in unvaccinated people. Why are you so pessimistic on Omicron danger? I don't think any of the variants pose any more danger than SARS-CoV-2 originally did. Get vaccinated and you'll be fine. If we had 90% of the world vaccinated, there'd be no variant issues at this time. If we had 90% of the U.S. vaccinated, there'd be no variant issues. We'd not be talking about any of this. None of them could take hold. It's all about vaccination, not about variants. Thank you, Violet, for your contribution. Really appreciate it. And I love your conversation with each other. The lab mate spent the day with Walter showing him how to use CRISPR-Cas9. That's very nice. What does that get Isaacson? I'm not sure. Because, the cast from Contagion spent a few days in Ian Lipkin's lab, but they still got things wrong. You can't learn science in a few days. I don't know what the point of that is. That's like a show, right? Can blood donations from vaccinated people help folks? No, they don't work very well. There have been many studies showing that convalescent sera doesn't work. So, no. Haven't had a coronavirus virologist on for a while. Last one was Susan Weiss. Yeah, we'll have some more. We've been going through the vaccinologist and the immunologist, and we'll be going through them for a while. Would you recommend N95s? I don't. I wear a cloth mask because I'm vaccinated, and I fully believe that vaccination protects you. Of course, I'm healthy. I am 68, but I'm healthy. If you aren't so healthy, yeah, wear an N95. It's a great mask. If Rogan were interested in science, he'd have me on. Period. not pundits. He has pundits on. He has policymakers. He doesn't have basic virologists on. They're the ones who understand this. He doesn't have to have me on. He could have Ralph Barrick on. Could have Amy on. Thank you, Great American Road Trip. Appreciate it. Nice beer. Got original strain. 3 Moderna jabs tested positive today with antigen test. Symptoms are cold-like on day 2. Well, you know what the recommendation is. You're supposed to isolate for 10 days. I can't tell you otherwise because I could get arrested, I guess. But if it were up to me, I think 2 to 3 days would be sufficient. With that kind of vaccination, you're not likely to be contagious after that time. But you didn't hear me say that. Omicron may have evolved inside a patient. Could have be undergoing positive selection to become more transmissible. It could be, but it has to be shown if you want to make that conclusion. And that's very hard to conclude. I don't know that it evolved inside a patient. It may be, but we don't know if it were immunocompromised or something else. I mean, these are all speculations, and I think we have to be careful about conclusions. Let the scientists sort that out, right? Do monoclonals confer T-cell level immunity? No. Just neutralizing immunity. Depends on the monoclonal. Some of them for a couple of months. GSK apparently lasts for up to a year. Doubt you will get to this. So that's a challenge. Doubt you will get to this. I'm still going here. I'm going to get to the end. Look, first time ever. And we still have 900 people. Very few have left. And mods, I'm very sorry to keep going, but you can always drop out. Doubt you'll get to this. Any reason to avoid cannabis use? Nope. You're good. I'm not advocating it, but you're good in terms of vaccination. How come each new variant correlates with a spike? So I think it's mainly human behavior. It really depends on what people are being infected. So if there are a lot of unvaccinated people, they would have been infected by anyone. If so, if they're getting together, if they're massive concerts or whatever, they're driving the infection. So it's a coincidence. And Tony says, nah, it can't be so many coincidences. But yeah, I think it could be. It could be some antigenic evasion. That could explain. For influenza, antigenic evasion actually explains the dominance of one variant over another. So I think we need to figure that out, and we don't, and we can't do it just by making observational studies. Look at this. First time I reached the end of all the questions. How about that? And we just went another half hour. So that tells me in the future we only need to go an extra half hour. Only 31% vaccinated in South Africa. So you see how you can have spikes, right? Thanks, A, for your contribution. Really appreciate it. You can't get to the end. It's like a dog. You're right. I can't. But at some point, I just stop. But I did want to try and get through all of these tonight. So, and I know there's about a minute's lag between when you type your comment and when I see it here on my streaming software. So stop asking questions now. You can just make comments and thank me and so forth. But then we can end it. Kat, you said, do you think if we called it a third dose, then booster, would there be more compliance? I doubt it. I do like third dose better, right? But I don't think that would make a difference. No. I don't have thoughts on India's story. I'm sorry. I haven't looked at it this week. From what I could see, they were doing cases are down overall. They're doing a very good job vaccinating. They still have many people to vaccinate because it's a huge country. But I think they've done a great job they've vaccinated more people than we have in the U.S., right? Yeah, last week I showed you Raoul's book. That was fun. And this week I showed you the tardigrade, right? Oh, and behind me is, wrong side, Oh, my lights on my icosahedron burned out, and there, of course, is the glass virus by Luke. Who's Luke? Oh, my God. Luke Glass Viruses. Luke Jerem. It's a Luke Jerem glass sculpture. Love it. Okay, folks. If you celebrate Christmas, have a merry one. If not, have a merry anyway, but be safe. I love that you're all here tonight chatting about viruses. It was Doudna's lab mate that listens to TWIV while working in the lab. Well, that's good. So that's the kind of thing we need, and more people will hear about TWIV. Thank you, Les, for telling me that. And get more people. Not because I want notoriety, but I think it's important that people learn. Folks, I am really interested in teaching you guys, you who are here, and everybody else. So the more the better. Elijah, no stupid question. In the future, could variants actually be undergoing selected to infect unvaccinated people? No, well, in a way, they do already, right? They do better in an unvaccinated person. They make more virus and they spread easily. So if you are vaccinated, it tamps down the spread. So that's already happening. Have a great holiday, everyone. Be safe. I will be back on Monday with the Virology Live, and Wednesday also, and then Wednesday evening next week, before the end of the year, Q&A with A&V. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your contributions. Good night.